Entrepreneurs need to do a lot of interfacing with customers, whether you're interacting directly with clients as they experience your product, or you're doing customer validation. If you follow the lean startup model, entrepreneurs Eric Ries and Steve Blank argue that you must talk to your customers frequently to figure out how you need to pivot.
Customer validation is different than selling. It's about connecting with customers and asking them what they think, how they use your product or service, and what you can do better. It's an integral part of the Lean Startup Method. Very briefly, the Lean Startup Method for entrepreneurs provides a scientific approach to creating and managing startups and getting a desired product to customers' hands faster. You're welcome to check out the book yourself, but whether you're familiar with them or not, customer validation is crucial for any entrepreneur. Sitting down regularly with customers and watching them use your product or asking them what they think of your service can be hugely helpful. Here are some of the other benefits to customer validation. First, it's a great way to fish for testimonials. If you're asking them about your product or your service, they can often tell you something that was a really great benefit, and then you can ask them to share it, or you can post their quote on your website. It's also a really great way to improve your product. They might bring up something that you hadn't thought about or tell you a new aspect that can help you make it better very easily. I often ask clients to sit down with me after we've worked together to ask them, what could I do better? They've given me great ideas for my onboarding process, as well as after I'm done with a client, what they would have liked to have seen to make sure that they could use the tips more effectively. I also often ask students, I'll personally message them and ask them what they thought of my courses or my products to try to make them better. Oftentimes, customers have wonderful ideas about how to improve your product, and you get that advice all for free. Third is this really helps build rapport. So even if you've already worked with a client or a student, just asking their opinion and then trying to implement it can really build rapport for either upsells or just having a good relationship for them to pay it forward or recommend your service or product to someone else. This is also how you get lifelong customers. I have customers who I sit down with every few months after they've bought one of my courses or books and just ask them how it's going, what do they think, and it's been a really great relationship and a great way to improve my business. You also learn more about your customers, and of course, customer validation, sitting down with customers, is a great way to practice body language in action. And body language can help tremendously in customer validation because you help them feel comfortable to open up. You really want them to give you the most honest opinion possible. Them trying to sugarcoat it isn't going to help you. So you can use body language to help them trust you with their opinions. It also makes them feel more rapport and encourages an honest and deep conversation with emotion that you can tap into to then make your product or business better. So let's talk about some of those body language cues that you can use to help with customer validation. Mirroring is something that we do naturally as humans when we like someone. In fact, we actually have what are called mirror neurons. A mirror neuron is a neuron that fires even when it sees someone else doing an action. So for example, if you look at an angry face, your facial muscles will begin to pull into that angry face even if you don't feel angry. That's because our mirror neurons see an angry face and begin to copy them. I think that the evolutionary reason that we do this is because mirror neurons actually help us feel empathy. So when we see someone in pain or in happiness, we copy them so that we're able to literally feel how they feel. So the reason why I bring mirroring up here is because it's very important for customer validation and anytime you're interacting with clients as a way of building rapport and building connection. When we like someone, we mirror them even more. So there was a wonderful study that looked at best friends, and it had best friends come into the lab, and it videotaped these friends talking, and they realized that the closer the friends were in terms of how long they had been friends, the longer the pair had been friends, the more they mirrored each other subconsciously. And this happened with blink rate, breathing rate, the way they held their body, their heart rate, their respiration rate, their entire bodies actually mirrored each other. So great rapport when we're with our best friends, we already mirror them naturally. And you can actually do this with clients to build rapport faster. So before I actually talk about how to use mirroring with clients, I just wanted to show you a very quick video of how when we like someone, we copy them. And this is a really cute video of two twin babies. And you can see that they actually are copying their dad and each other as a way of showing rapport.
He's my boy. Oh, bless you. How's the baby? Oh, bless you.
as you can see in the video, the babies actually begin to fake sneeze as a way of mirroring their dad. So we do this from a very young age to show when we like someone as a way of building rapport. And you can do this with clients, with your body language as well as with your cadence. Now, this is a very advanced technique and you want to do it very subtly. I usually don't employ mirroring unless I'm really sure that I can do it subtly and effectively. The most that I'll do is actually just copy their body posture, especially if it's an open posture. I don't copy closed postures because I don't want them to actually continue being closed. But if there's someone who's sitting very openly, very confidently, I'll copy the way that they're sitting as a way of showing them that we're on the same page. And that's also good because it encourages them to stay in that open body language. You can also match their cadence. This is very helpful if you do a lot of cold calling or cold pitching. For example, I was speaking with a Southern gentleman and I was pitching him on a speaking event, and I tend to speak very fast, as I'm sure you've heard listening to this course. And he was more of a slow talker like that. You know, he talked in that nice Southern drawl. And I didn't want to copy his accent, but I definitely wanted to slow down the words I was using. So when he was saying, yeah, I'm real interested in this event, but I'm just not sure if I should do it. So I copied the way his cadence, the way he said his words. So I said, I'm happy to take it as slow as you need. You let me know whenever you're ready. I'm happy to answer any questions. So I use the pacing or the cadence to match his. This is very helpful if you're speaking with people who are from different countries or different cultures. It's a way of getting on their level. You can also use similar word usage. As we learned with the learning styles, if they are saying, I see what you're saying, or I can visualize that, you also use seeing or visualizing words. And facial expressions, as we talked about, we already subconsciously copy people's faces. And before we talk about the facial feedback hypothesis, I do want to emphasize here that mirroring is way more important for men. When men mirror women, women report that those men are more caring, intelligent, interesting, and attractive. So mirroring can actually help women take you more seriously and like you more in both business and dating.
Now I want to highlight an interesting phenomenon here called the facial feedback hypothesis. The facial feedback hypothesis states that facial movement can influence emotional experience. For example, if you're with someone and not sure what they're feeling, you can try to make the face they are making. This is a pretty powerful tool. First, it helps with mirroring and connection. Second, you can begin to feel what they are feeling to know how to address any concerns they might have. I did this with a client recently when I couldn't figure out what was holding her back. So I made the facial expression she was making. It looked something like this. It didn't quite fit into any of the 7 micro-expressions, so I wasn't sure what it was. So I copied her face and began to feel anxious and kind of exasperated. I thought perhaps that's what she was feeling. So I took a deep breath and said, let's take a break and work on something else. It seems that this is a really anxiety-provoking topic for you. And that was all she needed. Once I named the emotion she was feeling, she was able to let loose and tell me what was actually going on for her.
I have a few tips, especially for men here. First, do remember always to mirror because it's more important for men to mirror, especially when they're around women. But second, you have to watch out for territorial displays. Territorial displays are when men spread out expansively, they put their feet on the desk, or they do this alpha cross, which is when you put your ankle over your knee in this picture as you see here. This is also called a crotch display with overly wide legs. Women immediately, when you do this in business situations, you should watch that when men engage in a crotch display or a territorial display, women in the room usually immediately cross their arms and legs in a defensive position. So in business, men should be very aware that those kind of territorial displays are seen as aggressive. And oftentimes women think of men who do that as unfair.
One of my favorite phrases to use when I think I spot an emotion in someone when I'm speaking to them is, maybe I'm wrong here, but, and then name the emotion in a gentle way. I call this naming and taming. You name the emotion and then it helps tame it. This almost always gets to a deeper conversation. One thing that is changing for nonverbal interpreters is that facial expression reading is getting harder and harder. There are a number of studies that show that people who get Botox not only have less wrinkles, but also have less emotions. They're finding that when we can't make the face, we actually feel the emotion less. So women who have had gotten their smile wrinkles Botoxed are actually reporting feeling less happy. Ugh, this is so scary. So this is a warning that Botox not only makes it harder for us to read people's faces, but it actually numbs people's emotions as well. This next tip is about using the power of nodding. Research has shown that people will talk 3 to 4 times more than usual if the listener nods their head in the up and down motion. Now, you don't want to look like a bobblehead and do this constantly throughout the conversation. You want to use it strategically to encourage the person you're speaking with to continue when they say something you like, you agree with them, or to reinforce a certain concept. You can even use the triple nod. When talking to someone you want to get talking more, employ the triple nod. This is like a nonverbal version of the ellipses, or 3 periods. If the person you're speaking with stops talking, but you want them to dig a little bit deeper, you can try nodding 3 times in succession. It will signal them to keep going. The triple nod is actually a nonverbal command for people to keep talking, and almost always people will continue speaking. In practice, it looks a little bit like this. So Scott, tell me what you thought about the project.
Overall, it was good. I thought it was a bit slow. And I didn't really like the colors, to be honest.
So that's how the triple nod works in practice. One thing to be careful of with nods is not to do them too fast. When people nod quickly, it's a nonverbal sign of impatience, while the slower you nod, the more patient and engaged you look. It's the difference between this, and this, Same behavior, totally different feeling. This next tip is the nonverbal cue for withholding. Pursed lips are when someone mashes their lips together, kind of like this. People do this when they don't want to tell you something or are withholding information. For example, if you ask a woman how much she weighs, she will almost always go, because she doesn't really want to tell you. So watch for this behavior when talking to people. If you see it, dig deeper or ask more questions so you can get to the truth.
We have long known the power of names. Even Dale Carnegie in How to Win Friends and Influence People said that the power of remembering and saying someone's name is a wonderful way to connect with someone. And this is important for both customer relations, customer validation, and building rapport. So first, try to know people's names ahead of time. Memorize them before they even walk in the room. If you have to, you can also memorize names on the spot using different mnemonic devices. I try to always say someone's name out loud and then try to remember either someone else they remind me of or a trick to remember that name. The Kellogg School actually did an interesting study that found that we trust people who mention names of people we know. So the more people you have in common, the better the trust is going to be. I highly recommend to do research, especially on LinkedIn, and see if you have any common friends and mention those right away. If someone introduced you to them, mention that name when you first meet. Just mentioning that name, even if you've already connected on email and mentioned the name, mentioning it in person can help build trust right away. Really quick tip here is research has found that pretty women make men think less. So if you're demoing a product or if you're asking a customer for validation or testimonial, do not use a pretty woman. I know that a lot of people, this is counterintuitive. You know, we watch game shows and products where the women are very beautiful holding up the products. And this is okay if you have a bad product. But if you truly want people to focus on the product and give you real feedback, don't use a pretty woman. A lot of people also will do research groups or customer feedback in groups. They'll have a whole bunch of customers in and they'll interview them all at the same time. I actually don't recommend doing this because research has shown that group think begins to happen where the whole group will take on one opinion, or people who have opposing opinions will lessen the severity of their opinion to try to get along with the group. So highly recommend doing these interviews one-on-one, and that's also another way for you to practice the body language. It's harder to practice body language in a group setting. In body language, the power of touch is called haptics. And touch is very important because when we touch something, we begin to feel ownership over it. That is why many men, when they are feeling a little bit jealous, they'll put their arm around their woman as if to sort of say, she's mine, I want to protect her, they want to take ownership of her. So when we are touching something, we tend to want it. For example, there's a lot of retail studies that show when women are shopping in a department store, the saleswomen should let clients hold the clothes instead of saying, can I take that and put it in a dressing room for you? Because the longer a woman holds the object or holds the clothes, the more she feels ownership over it and will want to buy it. So if you have a physical product and not a service, be sure to actually let your client as much as possible hold and touch the product when you're selling them and when you're doing customer validation, because they're more likely to feel ownership over it and want to have it. I saw this research and I just had to include it in the course. So the research from University of Toronto found that when you give someone a warm drink, that warm sensation of the drink in their hands and in their body, if they're putting it on their leg, can subconsciously make them feel like you're an emotionally warm, likable, and welcoming person. So they actually tested, they gave a couple people a cold drink and a couple people a warm drink and had them listen to the same pitch. And people who had the cold drink, they thought that the person pitching was more socially isolated, they weren't as likable, whereas when they had the warm drink, they rated them very warm emotionally and welcoming. So in your office, you might want to consider always offering tea. Make sure to always have regular room temperature water, not cold water. I actually offer hot chocolate to all of my clients because I love hot chocolate and I know that it's sort of a warm, comforting feeling and I want everyone to feel completely at ease. So just think about what kind of drink you offer them. Again, this is sort of a silly study, but it's something interesting to think about. Okay, so let's review some of the things from other videos that we've learned that could also be helpful for customer validation. Review your sales do's and don'ts. These are really going to help in making your client feel at ease if you're doing customer validation. Remember to always show your hands. This is always important. Don't do above traps, especially if you're demoing a product or if you're watching someone use your website. You want to make sure that you're sitting with them, not standing over them. Definitely prep your confidence beforehand so that you're feeling good before you even walk into the room. And try to calm any nervousness if you see it. That's in your client as well as in yourself. Now we can review what we learned in this video. So the beginner tips that we learned are the power of the triple nod if you want someone to keep talking. Also to avoid pursed lips and to watch for pursed lips. So that means someone's holding back what they're truly thinking. Try to use names as much as possible. Use the person you're speaking with, their name, as well as mentioning names of mutual friends. Some of the intermediate tips we learned, the facial feedback hypothesis and how empathy works. Avoiding pretty women and groups because you don't always get the best testimonials or client feedback. The power of touch, letting your client touch your product. And the advanced tips we learned in this section all have to do with mirroring. So you want to subtly mirror posture or match their cadence at the speed at which they speak. You can also copy the kinds of words they use depending on what kind of learner they are.